cut the lights.
And I'll be giving you a presentation on what it's like to be inside. And this happens outside. We're very fortunate to also have a person that was outside at the same time. So, Carleton Bailie, professional photographer. And so I'll give the story what it was like on the inside when I was employed there by McDonnell Douglas. It was a rather unique day in January 1997. And share my story with a little bit of an agenda here with job at the field site, launch vehicle flow at the Cape, general background information, day of launch activities, liftoff from the inside, 800 feet away, that's where I was, and then what happened at T plus 12.8 seconds. And then Carleton will share his story from the outside. So you get a double presentation here. Dave,
Yeah.
could you get the lights in the very back? I think we can just illuminate those. I have some, yeah, that's good. Get the contrast. So that's what this is about. I've worked, well, we'll start with the job. I worked with many contractors out there, starting with McDonnell Douglas in the old days, and got transferred to the Cape from LA with McDonnell Douglas, so I got a free trip out here. And worked with the Delta program since 1980, when did we move to 89? So never worked at a field site before, but I thought it was pretty cool to have, this was taken in the background. That's where I'm supposed to be. Being a model rocketeer since 1968, I've always had a fascination. And then got a job at a launch pad. So it was pretty cool. That's my little model I made a few years back. Yeah, nothing like a dead laser point. And this was during the photo shoot, and I brought my model in and said, hey, talk to the guy. Get a picture of me holding this model, roughly the same proportions as the background. Well, he kind of screwed up, but he thought it was good. And so I had the fortunate job of working at Complex 17 and the outlying areas that supported the Delta rocket. I might have to jump back and forth because I got jump back and forth to the agenda. I'm trying to keep to the agenda so we can stay inside an hour. I thought I had it printed out. What's next? Job at the Cape. So this is the kind of stuff we do. A typical job at the Cape. Actually, that's not the Cape. That's Denver. But it's all the same. Launch site. It's kind of a different kind of job, as you may guess. You don't always work on rockets, but you work with the systems and the related functions that supply and support the rocket is launching things into space. No news there for you guys. I mean, you've read about this all the time. A typical day, you drive in to work every day. Stop at the guard gate. Sometimes you see some guy stop at the side of his road, that's off the road, on the side, and you just see him fumbling. And you drive by, hey, what's up with you? He's doing one of these, he's looking. He forgot his bag. You can always, I've been there. It's frustrating because you get up to that gate and okay, where is it? Yeah, all right, good. But when it's not there, you go through the gate, you drive in, the scene changes every day. You see launch pads in the distance. I don't think I have a good picture of this, sorry. There's not a launch every day, but it's kind of cool to drive by en route to your workplace. You could be working in an ordinary looking office building or a telemetry shop like this one here, or a solid motor build-up facility like this here, which is the solid motor to the Delta 2. Or in the VAB where you find things like this, or outside at the launch pad at working facilities. So it's kind of nice in that regard. It's kind of refreshing, but you don't. The scenery changes. Where was I? I'm gonna have to jump back because the agenda. All right, job at the field site. I think I kind of covered that. What a field site at a launch facility is like. Launch vehicle flow, a little bit about the Delta. Oh, almost done with it. Not only do you work in rather unique situations, unique facilities, and I got to apologize. The only pictures I found were ones with me in it. So pretend there's a different face here. This is the intention is to describe some characteristics in what you find at the job, not about me. That's a data station, telemetry station, using what are called strip charts. They don't use those anymore. But since there's tons of channels of data coming from the rocket, every time you turn it on and test it, it has to be observed. You got to watch it and go, yeah, okay, you did the right thing. Today, these things are replaced with CRTs and fancy Lavigne type displays showing schematical depictions of what the rocket is doing, switching things, guidance comes on, the thing goes into alignment, the fuel gets full, the float switches get wet and they turn off, etc. So there's a few of these data stations around, one for each rocket, one for SpaceX, one for the Delta and the Atlas, and I was going to say Antares, but he flies out of Wallace. And during the job, you get to work, because it's a fairly small organization, on our group, it was like 200 people. And after years of processing vehicles, working with the same phases, you really get to know people, and it actually becomes comfortable. I mean, how else could I get pictures like this inside of a solid motor facility, hazardous facility, really know the dudes? So that's besides one. So, you tend to bond with people, you tend to come to trust them, and of course on launch day, all that trust and knowledge and people skills come in handy. The next slide is kind of intended to show that. We got characters. We have artists that like to express themselves on an artistic medium. It says something about a warning. Don't lick the side of the center section when locks is installed. Everything is cold. I thought that was cute, so I put it on. And this gentleman is posing for his caricature. I had to get that. And we have these safety badges. Again, I'm not talking about me, it's about stuff that you find. Safety badges, the rule is you exchange them. You take them out, and when you go into a certain facilities, you exchange them, you lay them down, the guy at the desk keeps it, and when you leave that building, you take your safety badge out and go home. Well, one day, one of our local comedians, unbeknownst to all of us, laid some of his personal artwork on our safety badges, and I walked out and picked mine up, and that's what it looked like. So there is a sense of humor there is what I'm getting at. I mean, you get, it all combines with getting to know people and working as a team and as a well-balanced team, I may add. Interesting sights, and this one up here is kind of cool. This guy here is still heading for Pluto. That's New Horizons. In case you want to know. And the joke here is, not the spacecraft, but the peeps. There are many groups that get their group shot in a clean room like that. Hey, I worked on, Mars rover. I worked on Spirit Opportunity. I worked on Pluto, New Horizons. And they show these pictures like this to their friends. Yeah, I'm in there. Well, with the suit on, the bunny suit, it's difficult to tell. So when I show this picture, I ask people, I'm in this picture, can you tell which one I am? And that is the question for you guys. There's something different. Really? I'm sorry, it's best. It's over on this side. The clue is over on this side. Look at the persons.
The one that's falling down?
Or pointing up.
That's the satellite, guys. That's the spacecraft. Yeah, everybody else kind of boring. Yeah, all right, I get our picture today. So I had to do something. Okay. So life at Cape, life at the field site. Where are we? Job. All right, now I got into getting into a basic flow. For those who don't know, any rocket, of course, comes to launch pad in pieces. It gets put together. This isn't the best picture, but it's the only one I can steal quickly. Basically, this picture is showing on this side of individual parts. There's a solid motor, there's a first stage and a big trailer. This is part of the upper stage here that you can't really tell. And it's supposed to go in this direction and show the assembly. So I'll try to make it a little bit easier. Yeah, solid motor. That kind of goes back to there. They get lifted off the trailer, put in this big building, and they get processed. How do they get processed? Well, they don't do anything with propellant, but they put tonneau covers on, wires, pressure transducers, etc., get them ready to be put on the vehicle. And then they get trailered to the launch pad. That's what that little arrow is for. The first and second stage get parked in a big building, hooked up, electrically checked, and it keeps getting checked until it makes it to this. I'll be brief here. Things get added as it goes from this direction to the pad. This is showing the first HPF, first stage, horizontal processing facility of the first stage is where the ordnance gets installed, shape charges, the dangerous stuff. And that gets trailered to the pad, gets hoisted up, put on the pad, then the solid motors get attached, then we haul up the inner stage, which is the top piece there between the fairing and the first stage. And there's the second stage. He gets more processing before he gets hauled off to the pad, plopped on top. And then things really get exciting when we put the payload up there, the spacecraft. Then all the, which happens roughly, I can only speak for Delta, but it should be very similar to other vehicles, about a week before launch. And then you start serious testing, fully integrated with the spacecraft. And to make sure everybody's working in concert. And on Delta, about 3 days before launch, we put the hydrazine, the hypersolic propellant, hydrazine and oxidizer in the second stage, which is, I'll show you that there. And the final FTS, flight termination system, checks. One big end-to-end check with a sim flight, make sure everybody's happy. And on launch day, we start loading propellant. Down here, the oxygen fuel, and of course, it's launched. I may bounce back. A day in the blockhouse, more strip charts, and this is a console in the other room. Specifically, I show these pictures just to show what the old blockhouse looked like, which kind of leads us to the topic of this talk. And, sorry, I gotta do this. Yeah, okay. Oops. The overview, we have the office building, bird's eye view here, the launch pad, pad A, pad B is over here. I know it's not the greatest detail. The MST, which is in the park position there, and the other items as identified. And just looking at the blockhouse, this may be too bright for you guys. Sorry. Looking at the blockhouse, you see it's got a pointy end because it serves both pads. And then there's this little square that sticks out, which is the kind of like back room, the data station we called it, where all the strip charts were, which is here. And this is the front, and the pointy end way up here where the sky is, and the back. So the front has its functions. Turn the vehicle on, switch switches, that kind of stuff, transfer internal, and on the first stage console, in the old days that is, back in the 90s, was the actual engine start button, which started the whole sequence on the first stage. Started cranked up the vernier and made it, the locks valves open. So it's kind of exciting, and you do this every flip. So you get good at it, and you get really, like I said, I want to emphasize the feeling is, you really feel part of the team because you're there. You turn to the guy next to you and say, "Did you see?" Like in this case. Did you see, that signal? What did they do there? Did you bump the engine? Yeah, okay. And it's just, it's tight. And in this individual's hand is a red tip felt pen, which when we had strip charts, we were all scribbling on there, which helps you learn the vehicle. Because a signal happens, turn on the EPAC, turn on the guy's computer, command the verniers to go clockwise rotation. And it's just the general mindset there with processing a rocket. You want to verify and then verify again. Now, obviously, today the computer systems, the computer data acquisition and command systems are now sophisticated enough to command the vehicle roll right. And he pushes the verniers to make it roll right. And at the same time, the computer's watching the telemetry going, yeah, okay, I see he's going the right way. Yep, okay, we're within tolerance. Good. And the operator, which would be this person now, who used to watch telemetry on strip chart, it's just kicking back on, yeah, okay, I didn't see any alarms. Yeah, we're good. We passed that. Okay, rolling back center, let's do the other side. So, that's today. But this topic, what the heck did you do? This talks about what happened on a cold day in January 1997. Excuse me, I gotta run back to the list here. Okay, day of launch activities, and then okay, we're almost there. So, an overview of what you're going to see in the other pictures, bird's eye view, the distance between the pad and the blockhouse where all the people are, 800 feet, no windows. In the old days they had windows, but unfortunately, now you can't even see. This gentleman that's standing up is standing in front of one of the old windows. This is the old school blockhouse, similar to the one on pad 26 with the Explorer. Got that. It's very angular. And in our case, since it was still in operation up through 1997, they kept adding more dirt on the outside, so it covered up all the windows. Day of launch. We all huddle up outside the, well, it's just a beehive of activity. The mechanical guys go out there and they're doing their mechanical preps, and they're pulling up plates on the launch pad. They get the tower ready to roll back. The electrical guys like myself and my buds next to me, we have an assigned position, either in front on the console or in the back watching telemetry. At the appropriate time, which is kind of cool because they make this big announcement. Current stations for terminal count. Really, that's what it was. I don't know if Carleton was there during those announcements. But
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so you know what I'm talking about. And it's kind of exciting because you know, okay, this is going down. We file into the blockhouse and go through the big blast door. So walk through all the dirt mounds first, and a little tunnel through the dirt sandbags. Go through the blast door, take our position, and it's just, again, it's like, okay, here's another launch. I'm cool with it, you know, I recognize, you know everybody in the blockhouse. You know what they do. And it's just well balanced. Or at least you get that feeling. So, then things start happening. The guys are done at the pad, they start moving the tower back. The pad photographers are excited because they get different photos now, dramatic ones of the tower rolling back, etc. Then we start to do the terminal count. Turn the vehicle on, all the electrical systems, one last check here and there. The prop guys are in the back loading propellants, the kerosene and locks, and a few built-in holes. But it's just like any rocket, to double check things and discuss any problems they may see. And all done on procedure, per procedure. We still use paper procedures today, mostly. I mean, they're trying to do online, computer readable, I'll just put it that way, procedures. But it's amazing how you still see a lot of paper procedures on the desks today, like the double port control room and the apples. But that's cool. Day of launch. So the time comes, and there's big, as you probably seen on movies and everything else, and I can't find them here. Digital readouts that you're constantly, oh yeah, we're T minus 14, and they're constantly taking it. It's really thrilling. We wait till the last minute to transfer, my mouse got better. Transfer internal. Now, most of you guys probably can figure that out. You don't use the vehicle's batteries until you commit. T-minus 4 minutes, picks up, the big clocks, the big digital displays all over. You know, you see it go from 4.00, 3.5, okay, we're gone. And then you hear the chatter. All right, FSA, let's transfer first stage internal, etc. And if you view bits that are available on YouTube of launches, anyway, I mean, Atlas, Falcon, Delta 4, maybe you'll be lucky enough to hear the comm, and you'll hear some talk like that. You know, FSA take first stage internal, blah, blah, blah. Second stage internal, FTS internal. And you clock down until 0, obviously. Now, in Delta's case, like I said, because of the design of the RS-27 engine, first stage engine, you actually have to command it to start 2.7 seconds in advance in order to get to liftoff at 0. A minor detail. So the computer nowadays, when you command engine start, it does that. You know, 2.7 seconds exactly later, it's done checking and it lets the vehicle go. Well, the vehicle goes by itself. This guy didn't have a plan to hold on. In the old days, the person sitting at the first stage console would MASH, would be watching that digital clock, listening to his comm, and hit it, and hopefully liftoff will be at 0. And usually it's within tenths of a second, at the most tenths of a second, so that's cool. So on that cold day in January, there I was like that, just hanging out, just another launch, you know, okay, and you scribble on the chart, T0, so that anybody reviewing the data later has that reference. Yeah, everything's cool, and above, you gotta focus on this picture, thank you. And these are just like electronic racks. And they go up about this high, and there's junk on top. You're not supposed to keep there, like people throw their CDs on. Yeah, you know, 6-pack code, whatever they find. Over to my left shoulder are video monitors up there that are fed into the blockhouse. Remember, there's no windows. And so there it goes, T0, yeah, no problem. You know, then you hear the rumble. Because it's got so much dirt around it, you really just hear a muffled. Okay, I'm exaggerating. You don't really feel the building shake that much, but a nice smooth roll. And but after dozens of launches, it's just, yeah, okay, that sounds good, yeah. And then, from my view on the data, I see this. And the first thing a trained telemetry watcher will say when they see that, he turns to the data station. Did we lose sync? Meaning lose synchronization of the data stream. And I'm looking at, I don't know what. And then you hear, we heard something. You got through all that dirt. And I'm staring at that. I glance up at the monitors. By that time, we're all staring at the monitors going, there's the vehicle. Okay, I'm out of sync, I'm sorry. We glance up and see this thing come apart. Shucks. This is the aftermath. We see, I'm going to have to go back, guys. We see this on the video. And our first thought was, okay, this is the wise guys doing a playback on the video up here. And then the sound hit. I was out of sync, sorry guys. And then we hear the oh, okay. Snap head down to the charts, and then you see everything going, oh no. And then from that point it was boom, boom, thump, 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 thump. And all the screens went black. Which kind of further added to the drama, because it's like, why did they do that? I gotta see what's going on. And we're, so, it was quite an experience. Where am I? All right, so we'll keep on this for a little bit. Let me just check my notes here. Sorry for the delay. So at that point, we had confirmation that we lost the vehicle. and the thumps just kept boom, 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 just kept randomly striking. And then the worst one was the freight train, and that was it really shook the place. And I remember staring at, okay, I'm at that strip chart thing, and I'm staring down the row, and there was one guy sitting there. He was sitting on like a bench seat with his headset on and had the deer in the headlights. Look, and he slowly looks up because that's where the sound came. He slowly looks up at the ceiling. It was pretty classic, but it didn't get through, fortunately. So what happened? Well, obviously, we all know now that one of the solid motors let go and took the rest of the vehicle out. Starting at T plus 12.8 seconds, which is what I wrote on the charts. So what next? Well, we got stuck in there with the blast door closed, no ventilation, no windows for an hour. Because that's what they do. That's what blockhouses do. They protect the people. And everywhere you look, it's like there's deer in the headlights. And it's silent. And one guy, whom I call the Hodge, he was one of our senior electrical engineers. He was just sitting there, he had his procedure. He was just sitting there, just nodding his head like this, going, it must be a solid motor. It went too fast. So it was quite the experience. There's a couple of quotes I wanted to hear. No, I won't remember. Pay no attention to that man behind the curtain. So there's the picture. We're in this building. The lights didn't go out, but we're in this building. We know we're trapped. We know that blast door is still closed. We can't see outside because they shut off all the videos, all the video feeds. Nothing's on the headphones by now, just that side, occasional. And we're pretty much left to ourselves trying to figure, okay, well, what really happened here? So you put the headset down, you start walking around, talking to other people. You look underneath the consoles, yeah, you can come out now, the thing stopped falling out of the sky. I didn't see a guy jump under the console in the front of the building, but I heard a couple of guys did, just out of instinct. And then we started smelling a little bit of smoke at the time, which didn't really faze me, because I thought, yeah, it's nothing. But when it started getting thicker, I'm looking at the clock going, oh, well, I hope they remembered us in there. And it got right before we were finally given the permission to open the door and get out. You could see the haze. I mean, it was at eye level, and there were people at that time lying on the floor or squatting down on the floor. And that was the cause of it. This is the outside of the blockhouse here. And so we are in this, you just see the ceiling, the roof of the concrete roof. We're inside there. This is the dirt covering everything. This is the tunnel, the cable tunnel, so right there, that went into the blockhouse. It actually went in under the floor and came up. And one large chunk of the vehicle happened to take this out, and guess where all that smoke was coming from? You think it sucked in there. And what could you do? I mean, I basically walked around and socialized. Well, what do you think? What do you think? What else can you do? One person on the safety console finally, I don't know why it was all of a sudden, but finally was able to operate that dedicated video that was, yeah, that camera must have been on the roof of the blockhouse, because they could actually control it. Now, safety's purpose obviously was to check the fires after launch and see if things are safe after every launch. So they had their own cameras that they could control. And I'm not sure why we didn't see that earlier, but I don't remember seeing it until like half hour, 40 minutes in. And you just see them scanning, and all you see are smoke plumes outside. So that was our only window. So a little over an hour later, they open the door. This is not the door, but let's go back here. They open the door, and everybody's like, okay, let's go. started filing out, and I just consciously remembered pausing. Oh, I gotta take this in. This is awesome. I was the last guy out. Blockhouse, launch pad. This is an actual photo taken after the incident. And unfortunately, because of the resolution, you can't see very well, but take my word for it, these black dots that look like burn holes are burn holes. And these black blobs in the parking lot used to be cars. And it turned into carbon. If we had a better resolution, you'd see these little black dots everywhere. So, out of the blockhouse we went, marched out, went this way. Went right back into the pad area. And went out this road, and there's an escape hatch here that leads to the next pad where the bus was waiting. So it was a nice walk. However, at this point where you come out of the blockhouse, the door's right here, the first thing you face is those buildings, the office buildings with huge columns of smoke behind them. And it's like, okay, what next? And the total absence of people. I mean, normally after a launch, there's guys standing out there smoking and joking, and they open the gates pretty quick, and they send in a team for damage assessment, etc. But it was really felt eerie that day because nobody was out there. It was just a single file of people heading towards the crash gate out here. And we were taken on the bus and carted off to the infirmary for a quick check. And it was there. We still didn't have the full feeling of full effect, the full feeling, for lack of a better word, of what actually happened. And it was there at the infirmary that the CNN was starting to play it, and that's when we finally saw this. And it's just amazing. Gee, we lived through that. I had a video I wanted to play, but it may or may not work. So these are some views outside this big crater in the parking lot. And we're leading into Carleton's section, which will give a little more detail, and he's got his story to tell you what happened outside. There's the nozzle, also known as the nozzle. The main engine came out and plopped itself on adjacent another launch pad. And the interesting thing is, this is where the freight train of the vehicle hit, and you see it exposed to rebar. So we were just on the other side of this wall. Two different views, obviously. This is the roof, this is the section that dug up all this, plowed up all this dirt, launch pads out that way, and bam! So it was quite an impact. And we saw it, weeks later. So this is Carleton's section. So I will switch over to Carleton, which will tell you a little bit more about what it was like outside when this all happened. Let me call it up, Carleton. If I can work this thing. We do this. We do this. And then we'll, yeah, I hope so. And then after the, no. Yeah.
Yep.
So we'll wrap it up with a kind of a closure and what it looks like today. So Carleton, here you go. Let me fix it for you. A little background, Carleton Bailie's been with the Delta program, doing, well, the official photographer since 1980. BSB.
BSB was the first one.
I wanted to look that up, 87, 88, that's good.
And then they shipped me out to Vandenberg, and even the fog never, the fog didn't get me, and Pad B never got me. And Pad B was after they put in all the improvements for.
Wow. So tell them a little bit about what you.
Right. Well, my background actually is in zoology. So how I got into photography, I've been doing photography since I was like in second grade. And being a photographer, I have always got my camera with me. So it just doesn't want to work. So I have to take a picture of all you guys so that.
I didn't know he was going to do
No, well, that's why if you're ever in a really bad car accident, you do not want a photojournalist to be the first on the scene. Because they're going to take the body, or what's left of it, and position it in the sun so they can get a good shot. And after they get the good shot, then they'll call 911. So they have to do that. This particular launch, the day before, January 16th, was actually the launch day, one of the original launch dates for it. And we all got up to the press site, which is where off the Control Tower Road, I think it's called, where the old Mercury Control building was. And they were celebrating the 50th anniversary of the Air Force. And I've been out there long enough to know that sometimes when they start celebrating certain things and putting people's names on rockets, you hold your breath going like, okay, is that a good omen or a bad omen? So something happened that day, and the upper level winds didn't do it, so they scrubbed the first day, and I came back the next day, and this would be like at 7 or 8 o'clock, looking at the rocket. This would be like a 7 or 8 o'clock on a camera pointed toward the vehicle. The day I went out to reset the cameras, I was the only news guy that showed up. The Air Force had their people out there, but none of the others, Florida Today, Orlando Sentinel, it had gotten to the point where, you know, it's another rocket. It's routine. It's routine. I will say the next launch, there was probably 150 people there. Up to and including CNN had set up a mobile broadcast studio. So the day I did there, I convinced the lieutenant I had not been out there for some time where the tower had been rolled back. So we spent about 2 hours out there taking, this is film before digital, so you know it kind of broke the bank, but I took pictures of everything and anything just because I thought it was so cool to be that close to the rocket. So we had, these were two 35 millimeter cameras, and you can see some pictures later on, and then the one on the right is a Hasselblad camera. And a little later on you can see the results of, we had, the Hasselblad didn't work, I don't think, but all the 35 millimeters did, and well, by the end of the presentation you can probably agree that Disney, with all their pyrotechnic budget, probably could not put a better show on if they tried. This was again the day before. This was from the camera angle that I had set up closer. It's inside the gates, but it was closer to the Blockhouse. I had this feeling that I was also shooting for Aviation Week in Space Technology, and I had been shooting for Boeing. And my theory by that point is like, okay, if these guys don't like the pictures, it's going to look nice on my wall. I'm going to see to that. So I tried to get it where it got a little bit of the tower in it for perspective, and then you'd have the rocket going up beside the tower. So this is the actual shot from where I had set up the main camera to get a wide angle shot. And that's pad A there.
Well, you can kind of see the giveaway down here.
Yeah.
So, well, yeah.
So, and then this is just a wide angle to show a little bit about what it looked like in pristine condition beforehand. And that's more or less what it was going to look like when the actual launch. It was a daytime launch, so while they had the generators out there, I don't know, they've been using them, I guess, the night before.
You just have it.
And this is after, of course, they rolled the MST back to what I call the little candy stripe thing there. You know, that kind of plays an important part in one of the hits.
Just to interject a few things, yeah, the MST, or the service tower, runs on rails. You know, he closes the rocket when we need to work on it. It's got the elevator in it, and service, like any service tower, all right? Any old school service tower. On a lot of the new vehicles like Atlas and Falcon, you will see a big service tower. That's different design. They're also kind of restricted on what they can accomplish at the pad if they need to fix anything on the rocket. But that's what that's about. The generators serve the floodlight, the xenon searchlights, that's kind of like standard setup for every launch. They're ordered by the support contractor. Hey, set up your floodlights tonight, okay. That's just launch support. Okay.
So, and I will interject right here that a lot of these pictures have not been viewed before outside of McDonnell Douglas and the Air Force, because when something like this happens, it's not exactly your first topic of speech when you want to talk to the workers out there. So we kind of like put them in a shoebox and hide them away, and you know. So this was actually from the press site. We were about a mile and a quarter away. I was using an 800 millimeter lens. When I first got my pictures back, I'm like, oh man, I'm so sick, and I'm like, there's all this dirt on the pictures. And I started looking on the pictures, and you could just barely see right there what I thought was a scratch on the negative. But as I looked into the pictures, it turned out that was the crack on the booster that aired. Now, as it was going up, we heard from the press site what sounded like a rifle shot. So everybody at first thought maybe somebody had nailed it with a .22 or something. And I'm not so sure that maybe the rifle shot or the noise we heard wasn't the casing starting to crack just at the very beginning.
It makes sense, all that pressure. I didn't hear it.
This was, I had told Abweek somewhere, going by my cameras, I went back and did all these tests, and I said somewhere between 6 and 7 seconds into flight, I thought this picture was in the 6 to 7 seconds time frame, where the Air Force proved me wrong 6 months later and told me it was 7.2 seconds. So, and this is just a close-up that shows a little bit more. There seems to be some confusion whether it's the number 8 or the number 2, but I know it's one of the important ones. But my problem was I was shooting with such a wide, a tight zoom lens, that when it did go, I just got little bits and pieces of things. But I had 3 or 4 shots that I took real quick and they all had the booster, and you could see them as it's growing larger and larger and extending down almost the entire length of the thing. And the Air Force, I must say, we were like looking at the rocket this way at a 6 o'clock, say at the 6 o'clock position. Air Force camera people were at the 3 o'clock and the 9 o'clock position. So yes, they eventually got video of it, but I was the only one that got a still photo that they still went, what?
And if I stand corrected, if I'm correct rather, this image showed up in Aviation Week.
Yes.
I think I remember this guy showing up. Okay.
Yes.
That's what I meant.
So, and again, there's just a close-up of it. That the one on the right is just as it's clearing the tower. That was from one of the remotes on the, as I said, on the left-hand side. But it shows that the boosters look pristine, as well as pristine as they could look. And then you can see the next one, like 6 or 7 seconds later, that there was nothing wrong at liftoff, but within just a matter of seconds, it had started to split open. Now, because of the 800 millimeter lens, this is the explosion I got, because I was so tight in on it, and I had to switch to a smaller camera. What those pieces are, metal. It's
largely solid, burning solid propellant. As soon as the solid motors opened up, little bits of propellant that obviously illuminated or projected forward.
So it was good to have the really tight in on it, because if I hadn't had the tight in on it, I couldn't have gotten the crack. But if I had a wide angle on it, I would have, gotten. I think there is one of a wide angle shot that I shot from the press site that it's just barely.
You're right. You ready?
Yeah. That is what it looked like from where we were. Unfortunately, it happened about 2 or 3 seconds too late. That was with a Hasselblad. Like I said, we were just over a mile away, but that's that's how far off the ground it was. Everybody was running for cover. The Air Force was get the car, get the. And there were some McDonnell Douglas people just out there like, oh man, let's set up a picnic table. This is kind of cool. and I'm sitting there going like, and the Air Force says, run inside, run inside, run inside. And I'm like, well, it's like way over there. What do we need to run for? But then I'm also Mr. No Depth Perception. So I'm not sure exactly how far these things are coming out. And I'd run about 10 feet and I'd turn around, I'd take a picture and go like, yeah, ain't coming. Oh, yes it is. And so finally we ended up inside the old Mission Control building for about an hour until they gave us the all clear. One of the things that I found out later is that it started many forest fires, and of course you had the toxic plumes from the toxic fuels, and unfortunately one of the local TV stations tracked for several hours the toxic plume that was encompassing Brevard County, and actually what they were tracking was the forest fire. But one of the middle one, this is from one of those, the second of the two cameras on the left-hand side. The middle one, it's kind of hard to see, but the middle one is just, it's just like this tranquil picture. You don't see a lot of things coming down, but there's this, what I call an O-ring or some sort of metal ring that's got to be fairly large, just sit in the middle of,
Yeah, it just fell down. What the heck?
so whether that was like some kind of a connector, it looks too big to be, I mean, I'm not the rocket scientist.
Could be the wagon wheel with the forward end of the solid motors attached on the
So this didn't really get the good, this gave you an idea of what was coming down, but it got better. Now this is what, like I say, we set up the camera to do the artsy shot to get the mobile tower and then the rocket going up. So the first shot is probably about the 4th or 5th frame. The cameras are set on remote cameras, remote triggers, so that anything over 100 decibels will start the cameras rolling. And then if it stops, then the camera stops. But then if it starts again, the camera starts again. So this was about the 4th or 5th picture. The very first one's about the 4th or 5th picture in the frame. And then the middle picture is the last frame. It stopped right after that frame as it went out of view. And then the last frame, you just barely see a couple things starting to fall back down. And it had actually, the camera had actually stopped. And then when these things started coming back down, it restarted itself. And I'll point out one, you can see where the bottom part, left-hand side of the mobile tower is obstructed because that's the way I set it up. And we'll show you in a couple minutes how Mother Nature did a better job than I could have done. This shows you
on the other side.
between that frame, the frame on the left and the frame on the right, you can see how these are all completely full frames, so they're not cropped, they're not anything. But you can see how something hit the camera and actually centered it up. And if I had been standing out there while this was going on, I don't think I could have centered it up. And of course, the big coming down on the left side is what's hitting on the right side. And the more I looked at it, it's like I'm not a solid rocket propellant whiz. I mean, you know, compared to the Big Bang Theory guys, I'm probably more on the penny side. But it seemed like a lot of it exploded above ground right before it hit, because it didn't have a lot of holes in the ground, but you had a lot of like burn marks kind of thing. And there's a shot of that coming up. And then these were the last 3 frames that before our film ran out. Had it been digital, in the digital days, yes, and I'm not hoping for another one with the digital because I've been there, done that, and I never want to see it again.
One of these is a classic image that Aviation Week published. I believe it was this one. We were the launch guys, the launch team, were amazed at how can you have the solid propellant going sideways in that picture?
Yeah, I mean, it's
But obviously it's meant to bounce. Yeah, that's the wire there, bud. Penny's here.
Let's go.
Somebody find Sheldon.
Okay. But yeah, you can see in the front, it's going from the left to the right, it's going from the right to the left. The one in the middle is hitting at the bottom and it's going back up. The one on the right's got one coming in from the right and heading halfway back up the tower. Like I say, Disney could take all their pyrotechnic
Know-how and not get something as good as
and
this.
not get something like that. And the different colors and everything, it was a bright, brilliant blue sky, but the more stuff came down, I didn't change any colors. If you look at the last one, you can kind of see blue in the background, but the smoke, it just enveloped it so much that
It shifted the, that made it look hazy, I guess.
Yeah.
But obviously the horizontal pieces were from large pieces that hit the ground and broke up and ricocheted back up in the air. And by the time they passed the view of his camera, they were going pretty much horizontal.
And you got
Was
like
the
I think-
Blockhouse sort of off this way compared to that picture?
I always gotta look. Where's the tower behind it?
the
Right?
tower's over to the right.
Here?
Yeah.
Then the blockhouse is there.
Yeah, and the Blockhouse would be like over here. But in like in the middle picture, you got the two about ready to smack each other in the at the very top. So
Okay, we gotta.
all right, now this was the aftermath. This is a little bit clearer shot of the Blockhouse. The reason I put the two camera pictures here, this was after the launch, so you saw everything that came back down. And I was expecting the Air Force to hand me a Tupperware container full of something, but it wasn't going to be recognizable. And this is, there was the outside of the one block that hit the top camera, which is the one that got the mobile tower and all those pictures, that had something about the size of a golf ball that hit it. The others were completely unscathed. I used Eckert bags. I tried to get them to do a commercial with, like, if we can withstand a rocket explosion, it should be able to stand up in your kitchen. On the other side is an aerial view, a little bit better, clearer view of the aerial, and Moose can point out some things if he wants to. The red line, you can just barely see a little black object at the bottom. That is...
This guy?
yeah, that's the camera, and then there's a big spot right above that where the chunk hit that I think that hit the camera. But that's where the camera was, the top left-hand corner camera was, that was getting the mobile tower and the aftermath of all that. But you can see how much the fence line around the blockhouse was torn up. And it just...
That's what you would expect.
That's why I was expecting one big chunk of plastic. That, again, was from the press site about an hour after the launch, because they kept us inside sequestered for about 45 minutes to an hour to make sure that... I mean, we kept telling them, well, look, we're all news guys. You know, we're expendable, so...
Plus, we feel fine. We're breathing clean air out here.
Yeah.
Is this app? Okay, it is app.
The top left is the entrance to the Air and Space Museum, or I guess, is that what they call it?
Well, the museum next,
pad
five.
Yeah.
The Air Force.
The picture on the right, this was a couple months afterwards, but that's the blockhouse inside after they finally allowed people to get, well, our people to get back inside it and take a look at it.
Can't see it very well, but here's where that tunnel cover that was smoking entered where the cables entered, so it's, we had a better illumination, and I'm not knocking it, Carl, we can see a little bit of soot started appearing on this wall. This is a curtain that they hide there. We align the walls with to make it look, to hide the cable and make it look neater.
Now, well, by this point, I'd not made a lot of friends with the Air Force with these pictures, so.
So we gotta start wrapping up.
Okay, and then the bottom is a building that was over on outside the fence, but something big had hit. I think that's just north of the launch pad. I'm not sure which building it is, but
I can't recognize from that.
I know it's where the EEAP was when they
Yeah.
evacuated us over there.
The support building. Pretty sure.
This shows the tray tunnel where now correct me if I'm wrong, but I was told a solid motor hit in the tray tunnel.
Get down here, that's what started down at the entrance to the tunnel.
Right.
Because that not only damaged the sandbags, but it started all the cabling on fire. And like I said, that's where we started breathing. And it's debatable. I'm pretty sure we both agree now. This hole here was really softened up by all the water.
We were told that
fire
was
guys.
there was a fire there, and that the fire hoses, the pressure of the fire hoses caused.
Keep talking, dude.
The pressure of the fire hoses just caused a little sinkhole to open up.
Because that's just dirt piled up on the blockhouse.
The top left is the cab of a flatbed trailer, which you can see in the bottom picture. That's a picture of the crater that was in one of his shots, but you can see the flatbed trailer attached to the cab on the top. The right is just, they used to have mobile homes out, well, mobile home kind of things as offices.
Temporary offices, yeah. You couldn't build there, so they dragged in mobile homes, which were...
And then the bottom picture on the right is one I kind of stole from the Air Force, but it just shows the fairing sitting out in the middle of, still within the perimeter fence.
Yeah, that was, I thought I recognized the thing. It's kind of bent, but that's the thing.
And then they told us not to take pictures of the cars because they didn't want it to look like Armageddon had happened, but they had taken all the cars and moved them into one place just to get them out of the way. So you had a couple hundred cars, and that's why they didn't want pictures taken of it. But I remember going up to one of them, and the windows had melted down like it was candle wax. It was completely gutted inside, and yet in the back seat, or where the back seat was this bowling ball that looked like you could just pick it up, dust it off, and take it right off to the lanes. So it was a unique experience, one that the Air Force called a mishap. So, and again, I was the only one. It had gotten so routine that no other. There was only 11 news people showed up for the launch that morning, and 3 of them were from like the Penny Saver, I think. So it was. They did after this launch. They wanted to take the film and process it and give it back to me as soon as we possibly could. I said, I work in a lab, how about if I give it to you as soon as I possibly can? So they agreed to that, and then after that they switched and made us start filling out forms saying, should there be an anomaly, we will pick up your film and get it back to you as soon as we find out what we need to find from it, and then lose it and tell you that we can't find it anymore.
So wrapping up, because we are out of time, this is what it looks like today. This is the last East Coast launch. And you can't tell anything happened. Pad A, which is where all this happened back in '97, is over there. Grass is green, looks green. But unfortunately, there's no more Blockhouse.
I think the thing that surprised most of the people that I know went out there is that was it the liquid oxygen farm between the 2 pads was completely unscathed.
It's amazing. Even in the parking lot, there were cars before they moved them, in perfect condition. Maybe a melted taillight to plastic next to a car that's burned to the ground. Totally complete. It's fascinating. A little bit of one last comment, and we'll wrap. This is the end of the visual here, but. The subject of Koyaanisqatsi, I have to explain just a little bit. Koyaanisqatsi, as you may know, was the title of the article I wrote back in Tripolitan back many years ago, back in '98, of this incident. And it was weird because a little background on that. I'm just going to say 2-3 days after the incident, for some reason, what kind of bubbled up into my conscious mind was this eerie tune. I kept repeating, you know, somehow my brain was connecting a melody to this disaster. I thought about it a minute, oh yeah, what was that movie again? Koyaanisqatsi was an art project released, made into a feature film back in 1983, 84 timeframe. I had the good fortune to see it live, and it had what was different about it, because it was like an art project, it didn't have any dialogue. It was just set to a score done by Philip Glass, very atmospheric kind of music. And it stuck in my brain all this time. And the film is, I got a little piece here, and it's amazing how things get dormant in your mind and then sort of like pop up later. But the accident that I experienced kind of triggered this image, and then I started looking into it, and I think that melody. You have to admit, that tune's kind of eerie. It came back to me after this incident, so I had to find the film, and it all came back. You know, I haven't seen the movie since 1984, and this accident, Pad 17, kind of reminded me of it. So it kind of connected, and I called my article Koyaanisqatsi at Pad 17. The Koyaanisqatsi word, of course, is, you can turn the lights on now. I have it written down. Koyaanisqatsi is the Hopi Indian. That literally translates into life out of balance. And so I thought it was pretty appropriate, and that kind of stuck with me.
Then this is.
And because we're out of time, the Aviation Week part? Yeah, remember the Aviation Week? Yeah, these are the images there. So that's the artistic license connection between name and this story. And because we're short on time, we have another presentation coming up next. I thank you for listening. We have a few things we want to